I figured I was trying to hit with everything I had.
Marvin Hagler has knocked him out.
He always sort of felt denied, and he was going to make someone pay.
When he started getting dirty, then I started putting the punches together and meant to break his head.
The middleweight champion of the world is Marvin Hagler.
Here we are, we finally won the world title, and we had to run like burglars.
Marvelous Marvin Hagler waged a long war for recognition and respect in boxing, then walked away when it all went wrong.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a split decision.
He was going to take his dignity, he was going to take his life, and he was going to go.
He used to intimidate his opponent. They used to be afraid to just be going into the ring with him.
You got the muscles, the veins, the power. That's what he looked like. Power.
He's more of a pounding. Just think of a piston just constantly pounding. It's like a thud. It's like boom.
He had a chin of iron, he had the heart of a lion, he had the killer instinct in him. He hated his opponents.
That's his mentality, to be angry, so that when he's in that ring, he just wants to just squash you.
I never believed anyone could ever do what happened to me tonight. I got a couple of cuts, a black eye. I've never had those marks before in my life.
There was no wrapping on this package. You got what was there. War, destruct and destroy, everything about him focused. And this bullet head made the whole Marvin Hagler look like exactly what he should have been, an executioner.
Lee sags against the ropes. He's out of it. Marvin Hagler has knocked him out.
Marvelous Marvin Hagler ruled the middleweight division with an iron fist from 1980 to 1986. Behind a cultivated aura of intimidation, he was the real thing, gifted with speed, imagination, and versatility.
He fought mostly southpaw, but he would switch, and he was equally as good both ways.
The punch that you don't see, that's the punch that hurts you and knocks you out. And a lot of those punches from Hagler, you don't see them coming. They come from a different angle.
Somebody examined his skull once and pointed out that the muscle above the temples was almost like he had a football helmet inside, under the skin. So you couldn't hurt Marvin.
Impregnable though he was in the ring, Hagler was afflicted by one of the deepest of human hurts, alienation.
I think he always painted himself as the guy on the outside, and in a lot of ways the public thought he was. And I think it drove him.
He can't whoop Marvelous Marvin Hagler. That's it. Nobody can whoop me. I'm the best. They won't give me the credit, not even you.
I don't think the public understood how insecure this guy really was. I think the best clue of that is the fact that he had his name legally changed to Marvelous because he felt like people never gave him his due.
Marvin, it's not always been marvelous.
You'd be forced to say it. You'd be forced to write it. But I think it also speaks to the issue of a sort of inner voice that was diminished and a sort of lack of self-esteem that, and a real feeling that he wasn't getting what he deserved.
Marvin Hagler's attitude that the boxing establishment was always against him, they wanted to win, it was mostly paranoid.
People loved him. Fans adored him. They admired him. Marvin was so insecure about that. For some reason, he was like a horse with blinders on. He didn't see that. But it was out there. It was always out there. He just never let it in.
A lot of Marvin's rage was born in the fact that he was disrespected his whole career. That served to motivate him.
Never was that disrespect more clearly demonstrated than on November 30th, 1979 at Caesar's Palace, where the 25-year-old Hagler was one of two fighters getting title shots. The other was the deft and charismatic Sugar Ray Leonard.
Marvin Hagler challenges Vito Antuofermo for the middleweight title, gets $40,000. Ray Leonard is also a challenger, and the same card gets paid $1 million. And if you're Marvin Hagler and you know how good you are, that's very hard to swallow.
He is really chewing up Antuofermo at this point.
Dominant through most of the early and middle rounds, Hagler, a 4-1 favorite, was believed by his corner to be well ahead when he dropped into a defensive mode as the champion rallied late in the 15-rounder.
Mills Lane, who was the referee in that fight, stood there in the center of the ring and he said to Marvin Hagler, "Congratulations. Now when they make the announcement, you face this way and I'll raise your arm."
The decision is a draw.
It's a draw.
Antuofermo is still.
Vito retains the title. Hagler absolutely disgusting.
When the decision was announced, it upset me so much that I went back behind the stands and threw up in a garbage can because we just didn't do right that night.
He never forgot that night that he won the title and didn't get it. To him, it was a confirmation of all the things that had happened to him all his life. He was never going to get a fair shake. Not in boxing, not anywhere.
You can't leave it up to the referee, and you can't leave it up to the judges. There's only one way to do it, is to do it my way.
With narcotic power in either hand, Hagler raged against his opponents, winning his next 14 bouts, 12 by knockout. In 1985, he met an equally lethal puncher, known as the Hitman, Tommy Hearns.
This man is coming. This man is coming at me, trying to do damage to me. I gotta get him out. And I figured I was trying to hit with everything I had.
And he caught Hagler with two good jabs and a right hand that might have hurt Hagler. Tremendous pace in the first round.
You asked yourself, how can they take him? Because they're throwing bombs. I mean, each punch, it's like it's loaded with dynamite.
When I hit Hagler with them punches, I felt the impact to go up my arm into my shoulder. So I knew I hit him hard, and he still was standing. He was just still coming.
There were 165 punches in 180 seconds, and every one of them thrown with the intention to hurt the opponent.
This may be the most brutal, even round you've ever seen in boxing.
Marvin Hagler had a cut above his eye, and then you had this Hearns, like this stunned look, like he didn't know what had hit him. That was the wildest first round in the history of mankind, caveman days or otherwise.
In the second and third rounds, Hagler stayed on the attack, absorbing punches and pressing forward, banging away with both hands. But he got as good as he gave.
Hearns was always considered one of the hardest punchers in boxing. He throws his vicious right hand and busts Hagler's head wide open.
So the doctor comes in and he blocks the blood and he says to Marvin, "Can you see, Marvin?" And Marvin says, "I ain't missing him, am I?"
Hagler immediately thought the same thing he always thought. They're going to screw me again. They're going to deny me again. This is my moment.
He'd been ripped off before. He wanted to end that fight as soon as he could. And when that blood started pouring down his face, you saw the real tiger in Marvin Hagler.
Right hand. Sends Hearns. He doesn't know where he is. Hagler goes in for the kill now. He's gone. He's down. It's over. This one is history. Marvin Hagler, a tremendous victory.
Tommy was very cocky and I had something for him. This is what you call a sweet victory. This was raw.
The Newark, New Jersey, into which Marvin Hagler was born on May 23, 1954, was a city rife with political and moral decay. But Marvin's mother was a steady light in the dark.
His father left home early. He was basically raised by his mother, a very vibrant, energetic woman, Ida Mae. His family never really wanted for food or wanted for love. It was a family whose unity was forged and woven and created by the mother.
With the help of welfare and her earnings as a caterer and housekeeper, Ida Mae maintained a safe haven in an urban grid of violence, crime, and spiritual neglect. Early on, her son showed a characteristic that would become permanent.
He grew up basically as a loner. He lived a very remote, solitary existence. It was not safe to go outside.
Dominated by poverty, despair, and pent-up rage, Newark's African-American neighborhoods hit a flashpoint in the summer of 1967. The trouble began when a black cab driver was arrested and beaten by police.
The next thing you know, the store windows are getting broken. Molotov cocktails go. This was a city that had become a nightmare.
Bullets were flying everywhere. They could hear police running across the rooftops, cursing and screaming, looking for snipers, looking for looters.
During 6 days of rioting, 26 people were killed, more than 700 were injured, and nearly 1,500 were arrested.
There were nights when literally she and all the kids would be on the floor because they were afraid of bullets coming through the windows. And she just said, I got to get these kids out of here. This is not a place I'm going to raise them.
When relatives in Brockton, Massachusetts offered Ida Mae an escape, she moved her family there in 1969. But the factory town had few easy streets. After losing a sidewalk scuffle when he was 16, Hagler sought enlightenment at a boxing gym run by Pat and Goody Petronelli.
Sat down, quiet, very respectful. I says, you interested in learning how to fight? He says, yeah, man. He says, that's what I'm here for. I said, okay, let's get going.
We gloved him up, right? Put a headgear on him and a mouthpiece, threw him in a ring, and this guy belted him around a little bit, bloodied his nose, cut his lip, and then the kid just washed his face up, right? And he just walked out the door, you know? So me and Goody, we were talking, and say, well, I guess that's the last we're gonna see of that kid, right? Next night, he's back.
Right away, I liked what I saw. He seemed like he picked up a lot quicker than the other guys. Finally, I said to him, I says, boy, you're putting these punches together pretty good. I says, what's happening? He says, man, I've been practicing. I said, what do you mean you've been practicing? He's these different punches you show me. And when I go home, I look in the mirror in the bedroom and I practice all those different punches.
He said many times that I wanted to be somebody. Didn't know what it was, but I wanted to be somebody. I didn't want to just be another run-of-the-mill guy, and boxing was the thing that was foremost on his mind.
Following his dream, Hagler lied about his age to qualify for amateur fights, then over the next 2 years, won 50 of 52 bouts. At 18, he entered the National Golden Gloves tournament. Among the contestants in a lighter division was Hagler's future nemesis.
Sugar Ray Leonard in '73 was the superstar in amateur boxing. Marvin Hagler was just one of many of the amateur champions, nothing special at all. He was just a basic, fundamentally determined kid.
In the very first meeting, Leonard outdoes Marvin. He grabs the attention, he wins the nationals, Marvin loses.
A month later in the national AAUs in Boston, fortunes were reversed. This time, Leonard lost his final bout, while Hagler tore up the 165-pound weight class and won the Outstanding Fighter Award for the tournament.
So Marvin gets a measure of revenge. This is just, they've known each other for a month and they've already had this back and forth.
This became a crossroads. Do you wait 3 years for the Montreal Olympics, or do you go out and try and make some money now?
We sat down, he says, I want to turn pro. I said, why don't you keep fighting amateur and maybe we'll go for the Olympics? He's knowing me, he says, man, he says, I want to make some money.
While Leonard waited on the publicity and glamour that comes with an Olympic gold medal, Hagler rushed into a world run by hard cash, where winning wasn't necessarily everything. During the 3 years since he had turned pro in 1973, Marvin Hagler searched for recognition in the back streets of the professional boxing world. Sugar Ray Leonard, meanwhile, rode a superhighway to fame and fortune.
Marvin's fighting on undercards, and he's fighting through small arenas in New England, and his first fight he makes $50. Leonard, meanwhile, wins the Olympics, and he turns pro in February of 1977 and makes $40,000 for his first fight. At that point, that's more than Marvin's made in his entire career.
Ray Leonard was a star with that megawatt smile. He really succeeded Muhammad Ali as the superstar celebrity of boxing.
Handled by the relatively unknown Petronellis and regional promoters, Hagler had difficulty getting quality opportunities, despite going undefeated in his first 26 fights.
Joe Frazier always told me he had three things going against him. He was a southpaw, he was black, and he was good.
He was the easiest kind of guy to avoid. You didn't want to fight him if you didn't have to, because he'd probably beat you. If you did beat him, you might not get that much bang for your buck, because he wasn't that well known.
Finally, Goody said, we are going to have to make our move to what he called the lion's den of middleweight fighters in America, which was the Spectrum in Philadelphia.
He lost to Bobby Watts, he lost to Willie Monroe. He had to go back to Philly one more time, and it was 3 strikes and you're out. If he loses to Cyclone Hart, it's Palookaville for Marvin.
He comes out aggressively now, and then comes up with the left, and he goes down. Eugene Cyclone Hart goes down to the left hand by Marvin Hagler.
He just kept working and working and working, figuring the end of the rainbow. The pot of gold is there at the end of the rainbow, and I'm going to get it.
Even though Hagler beat more ranked fighters than some champions had ever faced, a shot at the middleweight title continued to elude him.
He always sort of felt denied, and that really drove him to have a great distaste for a lot of people, Sugar Ray Leonard being the most obvious example.
The fact that my career continued to blossom and he was still being knocked back to the back of the bus, I think it became almost like a resentment, if you will.
You take the Olympians out of the mix, then Marvin did as well as anybody in that time. You couldn't get a title fight in those days with 15 fights. You had to have 35 or 40.
Hagler's loyalty to the Petronellis was regarded by many in boxing as the primary reason for his slow progress up the ladder.
The bottom line was that boxing was run like a cartel, and they refused to play ball with the cartel. At one point, Marvin's thinking about going out to the West Coast and finding a different manager. He decided to stay. It wasn't long after that that Marvin's attorney, Stephen Wainwright, enlisted political help.
I got 2 letters, one from Tip O'Neill, who was Speaker of the House, and the other from Senator Ted Kennedy, both of whom made it plain in their letters that if I didn't arrange for Marvin Hagler to fight for the middleweight championship, that there would be a congressional investigation.
Promoter Bob Arum, a boxing world kingpin, got the message and gave Hagler a title shot against Vito Anafermo. Although his 50th bout ended in a stalemate, Hagler had finally broken through. 10 months later, in September of 1980, he met a new middleweight champion, Alan Minter, in London, but not before the match was tainted by a misguided remark.
And I says, well, no black man's gonna take my title. But I was told to say it.
It was just a nasty atmosphere at Wembley to begin with. There was this horrible right-wing element, soccer hooligans, National Front people, all this stuff in the audience.
It was sad, and it was angry that people weren't right. You see them in their faces and kill him.
He says, Marvin, you know what you have to do tonight? He says, yeah, man, I know. I said, you can't leave it up to the judges. He says, I don't plan to.
Says, come on, fight! And Minter's leaving himself open with this tactic.
And I've gone, come on. And he come on. And that was my downfall.
Minter is hurt. Minter is ready to go.
It's only the third round, and Hagler is all over him.
Minter's helpless on his feet, and Marvin hits him with hooks, uppercuts, jabs, knocks him so senseless.
Fight stop. It's over that quickly. The middleweight champion of the world is Marvin Hagler.
It was too quick. It was too bloody, and a riot ensued. The fans there just couldn't handle it.
Now bottles are being thrown into the ring, and beer cans, and the corner people are trying to protect Marvin Hagler.
Here we are, we finally won the world title, and we had to run like burglars, like we did something wrong.
It was another example of what drove him to become the man he was. They denied him, even then, the right to stand in the middle of the ring with his hand up and the belt around his waist.
Robbed of his moment, Hagler guarded his title jealously, knocking out the next 5 challengers. But, for all his skill, he hadn't had the kind of payday he had been seeking since he turned pro. Only one fighter could raise Hagler's stature and deliver the mega purse.
He used to talk to Ray about it all the time. And Ray used to just kind of lead him on, almost just like a fish on a hook, he would just kind of lead him on.
The people want to see it, Leonard. We don't want you to retire yet until you come with the marvelous one.
Okay,
it's got to be the big one, right?
That is the biggest one.
Prospects for the biggest one dimmed in 1982 when Leonard was diagnosed with a detached retina. 6 months after undergoing eye surgery, Leonard alerted the media to a major announcement in Baltimore. Hagler was advised to be on hand.
We figured that he was going to make the official announcement that he was going to take that fight with Marvin Hagler. So we were all tickled pink.
A fight with this great man, this great champion, could be one of the greatest fights in the history of boxing. Talking about money, you talk about Fort Knox. And this is the only man that could make that possible. Marvelous Marvin Hagler. But unfortunately, it'll never happen. Thank you, and God bless you all. Thank you.
Marvin was crestfallen. Not only his chance for redemption against Sugar Ray and to put him in his place and assume his place was gone, millions of dollars were also gone.
Here he is, a prop in this one-man play where Ray Leonard humiliates and embarrasses him, and then he walks away from boxing and leaves Hagler standing there, stripped to the core, with nowhere to go.
Was I cold to have him there, knowing fully well that I was going to say no? Yeah, it was pretty cold. But was it smart to have him there? Yes, it was smart to have him there. I just want to continue to create that drama, that intrigue. I did that.
I was really a Marvin Hagler believer. He was the most dedicated fighter I've ever been around in my life. I mean, when he went in training camp, he used to call it going to prison, and he meant it. I mean, he isolated himself, usually out in Provincetown, way at the tip of Cape Cod.
Whether it rained, whether it snowed, whether the sun was shining, we're up with the crack of dawn, and we out there would hit that road.
Can't think about it. Gotta do it. Who's the champ? I'm the champ.
No family, no friends, nothing. As the fight would approach, he would purposely get mean. We'd have 4 or 5 sparring partners sitting at ringside with headgear on, ready to go. 2 rounds, 3 rounds, man would say, get him out of here, give me somebody else in here, right? A fresh body. That was him. He was vicious and mean.
By the mid-1980s, Marvelous Marvin Hagler had taken on all comers. After 11 title defenses over 5 years, he stood alone, wealthy, respected, and satisfied.
Long-time champions are rare. Hagler was one of those champions who wanted to stay on top of the mountain.
The only thing that counts, man, is that I'm taking these back home. That's all that counts, man. That's all that means anything to me.
I think there was a feeling of being somebody, because that championship belt meant the world to him. That was his identity. That was Marvin Hagler.
With Sugar Ray Leonard still in retirement, Hagler focused on breaking Carlos Monzon's middleweight record of 14 title defenses. In 1986, he looked for number 12 against John the Beast Mugabe. who had won all 26 of his fights by knockout.
Mugabe is a slugger, total slugger. And I noticed that Mugabe was outboxing Marvin for a while.
When Leonard sat there that night, the Marvin Hagler he saw wasn't marvelous anymore. A little bit lack of reaction time, a little bit off on his speed.
Some of the body shots that he sustained from Mugabe were unbelievable. While Marvin won that fight, I think it took more out of him than any other fight in his career, and I'm not sure physically he was ever the same afterwards.
It was the first time I saw a fighter when he urinated in the cup that it was blood.
Mugabe was a rough customer, and Marvin finally beat him. And then he said to me, he said to Pat, "That's it. I'm not fighting anymore."
Though he didn't announce his retirement, Hagler settled into a comfortable life with his wife Bertha and 5 children. Financially secure, he emerged a man in full from those scary, bullet-riddled nights in Newark. He didn't even harbor ill will toward the man who had ridden in limos while he fought to survive back in the day.
Marvin and I were pretty good associates, friends in a sense. He gave me the courtesy of coming to my restaurant that I co-own with Mike Trainer. And that evening we sat around, had a couple glasses of champagne, and every question that I asked him, it was always responsive being somewhat negative, like I'm not motivated, I cut too easy, it's just not in my heart anymore. You know, he's telling me all these things. I'm saying to myself, this would be the perfect time to fight him.
It was all a con by Leonard. He was never Marvin Hagler's friend, but Marvin Hagler mistakenly thought that he was. He got sort of lured in by the same things, ironically, that he hated. You know, the smile, the slap on the back, the phony, hey, how you doing? You know, he bought into it too.
On May 1st, 1986, just 7 weeks after the Mugabe fight, Leonard announced he would come out of retirement to fight Hagler for the middleweight crown. Yet the champ, after years of denial, was slow to accept.
He didn't want to do that fight, not because he was afraid of Ray, but because it was enough. He didn't want to fight anymore. He couldn't concentrate on the fights the way he had in the past.
It was an agonizing period because Bertha was opposed to the fight. They were having some marital problems at the time, and it wasn't any secret. I always felt that Bertha, more than most of us, knew that Marvin had slipped.
Pat Petronelli, his manager, and myself drove through the night to where Hagler was living in New Hampshire. Pat sat down with Marvin to convince him to take the fight.
The hype machine churned for 6 months, enriching a tale of 2 starkly contrasting characters. Opposites in temperament, outlook, and style, Hagler and Leonard, it was said, were born to define one another in the ring.
Sugar Ray Leonard was a guy that you pulled for. He was America's boxer. I mean, he was a lovable guy. Where Hagler was a guy that, yeah, it's kind of hard to love, but you respected him.
I've been saving my body, my mind, just for this occasion. Now I have the opportunity to finally show the world that I am the best fighter in the world.
Before we put on our fight face, I'd like to take this time to thank marvelous Marvin Hagler.
Thanks, man.
Apparently he has his fight face on.
Perhaps weary of his opponent's easy praise, Hagler quit the publicity tour and began training 11 weeks before the fight. While Leonard worked out before crowds, Hagler kept off the radar, taking only urgent calls from his family. As fight night approached, the champ entered that dark place where his motivation lived.
He wouldn't eat the food that was brought on his plate. He would always switch it with his trainers, Goody and Pat Petronelli, because he figured if they were going to poison anybody, they would poison him.
Marvin's camp was very paranoid. They didn't want to have any Ray Leonard spies in there. And Marvin was just in this war mode. He was like a bull that was snorting.
Hagler and Leonard finally met on April 6, 1987 at Caesar's Palace, the location where, 7.5 years earlier, each fought for his first title.
I was the inspector that night in Ray Leonard's dressing room.
and the dressing rooms were adjacent to each other. When Ray was getting his hands taped by Angelo Dundee, that they were yelling through the wall, "Hagler, you're an old man. You're not going to win tonight."
The intensity of Marvin Hagler at that point was unlike any other fighter I'd ever seen. While I examined him, I don't believe that he even acknowledged anything I said or did. He stared straight through me. He was scary.
For Marvin Hagler, it was really his legacy going into that fight because he had been the middleweight champion for a long time. Sugar Ray Leonard was kind of like the cherry on top, and he really needed that to sort of validate himself.
This is the main event of the night. 12 rounds of boxing for the WBC Middleweight Championship of the World.
It meant more than just being a champion. It was about bragging rights. It was that moment of victory that will define who we are.
What we all wanted to see was another Hearns Hagler. We all wanted to see Marvin tear into this pretty boy here and make him sorry that he took this fight.
Marvin started boxing him when he should have put a little more pressure on him, and he's going right-handed more than he should have.
He boxed conventionally, which to Ray must have been like, wow, this is great. I don't have to deal with southpaw. He couldn't have made him any more comfortable than if he had drawn him a bath and gotten him his slippers.
Leonard was like a bumblebee, and Hagler was out there with a net trying to catch him, and he just couldn't catch him.
You could hear his trainer yell 30 seconds. 30! And then Leonard would go into a flurry. I used to call them 30-second pitter-patters.
That gets rounds. That makes, gets the attention of the judges, so you try to take every advantage.
The first 4 rounds, I was floating. I was rather surprised how easy I was able to hit him and how slow he was.
He was also really messing with Hagler's mind. He was really trying to get into his head and get him to fight his fight, trying to tell Hagler, you're nothing but a puncher, you're a slugger, you don't know how to box.
He said, slow down, you little bitch. Fight like a man. He said, fight like a man. I said, not right now. Not right now.
Now he's starting even to taunt Hagler. Smiling at him and just essentially saying, come on. And now Hagler's getting angry. No question about it.
When that fight started, it was a Hagler crowd. By the 6th round, it was a Leonard crowd, because people were shocked that Ray was not only in there, but that he was winning.
Hagler was really frustrated. And then he started coming, forget this boxing, I'm going to go ahead and knock this guy out. And that's when the fight really got exciting and got very close because he was winning those rounds.
As Sugar Ray Leonard's legs tired, he began to linger dangerously within Marvelous Marvin Hagler's range. In the 9th round, the champion, a 3-1 favorite, appeared to be in control.
And Leonard now with his back to the ropes. And another left hand by Hagler. Leonard's left hand down at his side. Hagler peppering him. Ray Leonard is hurt in the corner.
Ray was getting battered by Marvin on the ropes, and you can see Ray was thinking about giving it up. And he admitted to me, he said, yeah, I did think about quitting.
And I said, Ray, get out of that corner. Get out of the corner. Fight your way out.
Ray Leonard was able to do in that round even more than he had done in other rounds of the fight, making it appear that he had won in such a way that he implanted that clearly in the judge's minds.
Hagler was still cool. I didn't see at any time where the Petronellis felt desperate. Like, he's winning the fight. You got to knock him out.
The 12th and final round began with both fighters calling each other out, and it concluded with both standing, both signaling victory.
Ladies and gentlemen, We have a split decision. And the winner by a split decision and new middleweight champion of the world, Sugar Ray Leonard.
That one word, new. When he heard the word new, the look in his face, his whole world collapsed.
Marvin, you thought you won the fight?
I did win the fight. There's no doubt about it. After about the 4th round, I took the whole fight, kept it going.
Well, the most difficult fight you could score is a banger versus a boxer. And I'm sure Marvin felt, here's another situation where I got jobbed.
One judge, Jojo Guerra, had Leonard winning 10 of 12 rounds, but the other two judges made closer calls, each with a different outcome.
I gave the fight to Leonard. I had 7 rounds to 5, and the reason was he had the most effective punches. He made Hagler miss.
Leonard was moving around, boxing, boom, boom, but Hagler was pressing him all the time, and he was doing the harder punches, I thought.
I think the reason why he lost the fight was totally up here and had to do with his own insecurities in regards to Leonard. He almost felt inferior to Ray.
He always said his motto was destruct and destroy. Well, he didn't have that mindset for this fight. He really didn't, surprisingly.
They fought at Leonard's pace and at Leonard's style, and Marvin just couldn't put enough pressure on.
I cannot hurt Hagler. I knew that. But I could beat him on points. I threw better punches, cleaner punches, and far more punches than he threw. That's how you win a fight.
Ray Leonard stole that fight fair and square. And of course, Hagler was bitter.
When the fight was over, Leonard told me himself, "You beat me." And then when they take it away from me like that, it's hard to believe.
All the things that had tormented him all his life, there they were one more time, full display in the whole world. I won the fight. They took my titles. I got conned by this guy. They gave it to Sugar Ray. I'm not marvelous. I'm just Marvin, just like I always thought.
He just couldn't take losing to anyone, but to lose to Sugar Ray Leonard, I think that hurt him more than words can describe.
I have never seen a dramatic unraveling of a fighter or an athlete after one event. All the things that got him to the middleweight championship of the world, the strength of character, the ability to focus and concentrate, the self-denial of earthly pleasures, and all of the other things that got him there, they all disappeared.
In the months following the loss to Sugar Ray Leonard, his first defeat in 11 years, Marvelous Marvin Hagler went into seclusion.
He disappeared after the fight. He had a place up in New Hampshire. Goody and Pat couldn't reach him. He was just in a funk. You know, he was in a depression.
This had become a toxic event in his life. And I mean toxic by the sense that it was inside of him and it was eating him away. And it was not only eating him away, but it was eating his life with his family away.
His marriage, which was always kind of shaky, fell apart. From reports, he began to drink quite a bit. He went on an extended vacation. He was down in St. Bart's for maybe a month or so, just hanging out at poolside drinking, not wanting to be bothered by anybody.
Conflict between Hagler and his wife became public in June of 1987 when Bertha filed an abuse petition. A judge issued a temporary order barring Hagler from their house and gave Bertha custody of their 5 children. While Hagler didn't contest the court order, he did deny a news report alleging widespread abuse of alcohol and cocaine.
For about a year, Hagler agitated for a rematch, and he was almost frantic about it. Everywhere he went, that's all he wanted to talk about. He wanted a rematch, a rematch, a rematch, a rematch. Hey, Ray Leonard wasn't going to ever give him a rematch.
He says, Goody, he says, I'm having some problems, thinking about getting a divorce, blah, blah, blah. He says, might as well hang him up, he says, because I can't get that rematch anyway. And I says, Marvin, I says, great. I says, I'm on your side. You did a great job. We hugged, and that was it. He retired.
His career was bookended. He was screwed in Vegas in the Anafermo fight in '79, and he felt screwed in his last fight in '87. It was a perfect bookend.
Ray left laughing all the way to the bank and went on to win several more titles. And he left Marvin Hagler in an emotional lurch from which he's never really recovered.
In 1988, Hagler, with a career record of 62-3-2, officially retired. The next year, he moved to Milan, Italy.
He was going to take his dignity, he was going to take his life, and he was going to go. And he wasn't going to come back to something that he felt that he had respected for so many years, and in the end conspired against him, didn't treat him properly.
He found a sort of, not only a second home there, but a home that fit his view of himself. He became a minor movie star there. He feels he gets there when he never got in the United States, which is the great respect for being one of the great fighters of all time.
He met this girl that he fell in love with and married, and he has a new type life. Speaks good Italian. He seems to be pleased.
Hagler's goal of breaking into foreign films and then crossing over to Hollywood hasn't been realized. He stays busy making personal appearances and doing speaking engagements. In 2006, at a charity event in Boston, he showed that the old pain still lived.
The people were making noise in the crowd. It was a long night, and it was coming time to introduce him as our, main guest. And he came to me, grabbed me behind the microphone, and actually had thoughts of not going up. And he actually had tears in his eyes. As you were saying, these people don't understand.
We have got the best boxers in the house of the world we have here tonight. And you're not giving us the proper respect by running around and not sitting down and listening to what we have to say. Because our whole life is right there on the screen.
All he wanted was people to care about him, for people to love him.
Hagler was the type of fighter that hardcore fans always respected, but his greatness was always in doubt. The reward for him is that after years of not getting the limelight, he's now considered among the greatest middleweights in history.
He took on all comers, and he beat everyone. But his legacy, unfortunately, will be forever diminished by the loss to Ray Leonard. I don't think that's fair.
I don't think the world will ever know, besides of his ring accomplishments, they would truly never know who Marvin Hagler is. Because he's such a private man, such a proud man. He won't let you in. He will never let us in to his world. We just have to accept what he's given us, what he's shown us, that he's a champion, inside and outside the ring.